about to go south of the blue line with Jenn and Kenneth. Here we go.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to South of the Blue Line. I'm Jenn.
I'm Kenneth.
And this is Sean Shapiro.
Thanks for having me.
So, Sean, what do you do?
I do a lot of things. I cover the Dallas Stars and I cover the NHL for NHL.com. I also manage my own site as well, which is called Wrong Side of the Red Line. I cover the day-to-day of the team. I'll be at the draft next week, for example.
How long have you been doing that?
Been on the NHL beat since this past season. Before that, I had spent the past 4 years down in Austin, where I had covered the Texas Stars and the AHL, and had been up here from time to time. But this was the first full year covering the NHL beat for me.
Did you go to school for journalism? How did you get introduced to hockey?
Grew up playing hockey. First grew up in New Jersey. Then when I was 14, 15 years old, my family moved to Michigan. I was a goalie. When I hit the realization that I was not going to be able to play hockey or play sports forever. Since 7th grade, I've known I wanted to be a writer of some sort. And so I ended up going to Bowling Green, which is up in Ohio, studied journalism there. A couple stops first out of school, first in Philadelphia, working there, and then I was working at a newspaper out in Kerrville, Texas. And then I was working in Cedar Park, Texas, where the Texas Stars are based, and working at a weekly paper there until I was laid off, unfortunately, in 2013. And since 2013, I've basically been a full-time freelancer. I have my bigger clients, that's my NHL.com work, and basically, so that's my story in a nutshell.
Who was your favorite player to watch, like, growing up?
So I grew up in New Jersey,
Right.
and I grew up as a Devils fan. And I grew up as a Devils fan, and I grew up and as a goalie. I watched Bert Orr all the time. Playing street hockey growing up, I'd make kick saves and do all that stuff. Don't look up to his personal life decisions at the time, but but as a player, that's the player I watched, and I watched those Devils teams growing up that were built around goaltending.
What would you say is probably your favorite memory from working in Austin or Dallas?
The most fun I've had covering a team was when the Texas Stars won the Calder Cup, which is about a 3-year anniversary of them winning, and covering that team, which was one of the better AHL teams in history, just with how dominant they were during the regular season. Their power play finished the year on 27%. It was a team that throughout the year, it felt like it wasn't who was going to win the Calder Cup, who out of the Eastern Conference was going to play the Texas Stars in the final.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite things to cover, was cover that team and how well they did.
For the Dallas Stars, unfortunately, season ended in April. How quickly does a team that doesn't make the playoffs start transitioning to the next season?
Frankly, it felt like the Stars are getting ready for next year back in February. I mean, when you look at what they did at the trade deadline, and there's the dialogue, and you have to say you're still playing to be in it. But when you trade away Patrick Eaves, when you go and trade away Johnny Oduya, when you trade away even Lori Korpikoski, when you trade away veterans for picks or younger players, you're basically unofficially raising the white flag.
So how far behind are those playoff teams that made it through till 3 days ago? How far behind are they in preparation for next season and the expansion draft?
They may be behind in figuring out things externally if they're trying to work on a deal, but internally, GMs are prepared. Internally, lists have changed. Teams have been planning for the expansion draft. Externally, maybe you're late to a conversation. It's not really going to be that big of a factor.
We've already seen players that have been bought out. How much notice are they getting?
It's one of those things where if you're looking at the Stars, you're looking at the buyout candidates, and we can just. I mean, the buyout candidate for the Stars is Antti Niemi, or Kari Lehtonen. If you can make the conversation either way, but it's probably Antti Niemi. At this moment, the Stars have 3 goalies on the roster who are all making more than $4.7 million a year, which obviously is not going to be the case on October 1st. To go and tell one of the goalies that, hey, we're buying you out in exit meetings, it's a bit premature if the other one's bought out, or if the other one gets moved, or if there's a trade marker for the other ones.
Going into discussion of the expansion draft, how does Vegas decide the first player they take?
It's more of just an expansion selection, I think is the better way to actually determine it, because if you look at the past expansions, I believe it was Nashville and Minnesota both came in. It actually was a draft because it was one team Nashville would take a player, Minnesota would take a player, Nashville would take a player. This is a draft. It is officially a draft, but it's also more of a selection where they're basically just giving in a mass list. It could be obvious. You could be like, oh, well, clearly this was someone who was highlighted and this was one of their first. In general, we're just going to see that list, and it's going to be not in order they were picked. Maybe by position, maybe alphabetical order by team, who knows.
getting to the protection plan, do the Stars know what they're going to do yet?
The Stars know what they're going to do. We don't know exactly what the Stars are going to do. I would be shocked if the Stars go the 8-1 model because that would leave way too much available. So the Stars would probably do the 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and a goalie. The goalie is obvious; it's going to be Ben Bishop.
With the expansion selection discussed, that moves into the standard draft, which is only a few days after that. We have the number 3 pick. We got that in the draft lottery. But are we going to use it, or are we going to trade it away?
It's interesting because the Stars really hold almost all the cards heading into this entry draft here. Because while there's Nolan Patrick and there's Nico Hischier, who everyone believes will go 1 and 2, and there's some debate on whether someone might jump in there, but it's pretty much those at 1 and 2. No one knows what the Stars are going to do at 3. No one knows if they're going to move the pick, and so it's in a rare position where the Stars actually hold all the cards, seemingly headed into the entry draft, and it makes it really interesting.
How do you, as a writer who works for the NHL but also for your own organization, your own website, how do you stay on top?
Well, social media can be a tool and a weapon at the same time. It can be a tool because it's a great way to stay updated. Things where things show up first. To really understand things and really keep up with everything, have an idea for things, is you have to actually read more than 140 characters. What might show up on Twitter might be A, it might be false. B, it might just be a snippet of the whole scenario, and you're not getting the full situation. So it's a juggling act. You're figuring out. You're learning a lot from Twitter, and you're learning a lot from social media, but there's a lot that gets missed too because people don't actually click through and read.
We've seen mean tweets.
Right, we've all seen mean tweets. Do you ever get them directed at you?
Not as mean as other people. I don't know, maybe that means I'm not doing my job well enough if I haven't had enough mean tweets at me. I don't know.
Funny stories involving a coach or a player that you've maybe done an interview with.
I think one thing that's, I don't know if the word's funny, but just interesting, it's just being around the players every day. It's interesting to see how certain players treat the media and talk to people. Like, the one thing, Yuri Hudler had a terrible season on the ice this past year.
Yeah.
Yuri Hudler's a hilarious human being. I don't know if it was Yuri Hudler who read it or if his wife who read it, but Yuri Hudler read social media.
Yeah.
And there would be times that he would make comments about something on that. Not that was about his play, but had a bunch of quick quips that way. He would disappear from times and not talk to us. Esa Lindell is so his English has gotten much better, or it's either his English has gotten much better or his confidence has gotten much better. Basically, he's gone from a point where he didn't speak at all to speaking much English at all to now he speaks English pretty well. So he was in a spot where it was right after the Lori Korpikoski trade, and he had been in one of the corner spots in the locker room, which actually isn't that desirable because the two corners come together, so it's kind of crowded. And so he actually decided to move his spot over to Lori Korpikoski's spot that was open.
Right.
And in doing so, he walked right in front of a throng of media, and basically everyone pointed the camera at him. And at that moment, Essa said, like, "What can I do?" And said, "Well, I don't speak English." And then goes back to cleaning his stall and setting it up.
Do you have a favorite person you like to interview?
This isn't an indication against anyone else, but the guys who don't get talked to, don't have 6 cameras stuffed in their face when the national media shows up. Because those are the guys that, A, they'll talk to you a bit more, and they're usually really interesting people too. As I said, Adam Cracknell, for example, he's one of my favorite guys to talk to this past season. He was, and it was kind of cool just to see, side note, to see his work this past season as a guy who came in that, frankly, they planned on him being in Cedar Park, and he ended up being one of the best stories of the entire season.
What is the craziest moment you've ever seen in person?
Well, I've got a non-hockey one real quick. Around 2008, 2009, I was interning and I covered an inning-based football. This guy put together a football game where he thought that the way football was run was stupid. He thought that based on a pure clock it was dumb. And so basically he put together I believe it was 12 innings. And how it worked was the inning didn't end until each team had a possession. In that logic, though, you theoretically could extend your half inning by just attempting a ton of onside kicks. Well, this is a game between 2 semi-pro football teams in the Detroit area. And in about the third or fourth inning, and I still laugh saying this. There's a hit along the sidelines, and you don't think anything of it. But then 25 minutes later, a fight breaks out. Police show up. Guys are swinging helmets at each other.
Wow.
Like, the police have to break it up, and everyone has to, basically the game ends right there. He had made a trophy, the big one that said number 1, for the team that won the first ever inning-based football game.
Favorite hockey moment you've ever seen in person?
In person, and there's a bunch, but probably one of the things that's unique for me was I went to the, and not to cover it actually, but as a fan, so it was kind of cool to experience that. We went to the outdoor game between Michigan and Michigan State up in Ann Arbor, I think it was 2010, with my girlfriend at the time, now wife, and it was 110, 112,000 people at a game, and that was just such a cool atmosphere. And it wasn't great because of the game. I think it was like 5-0 game, and you couldn't see, you could see some things, you couldn't see that much, but just the atmosphere and just being around that and people watching a hockey game, that was just one of the coolest things.
Thanks for coming out.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to kind of let our fans know a little more about you. You just went south of the blue line. All right. Okay, so we have a sign off.
Okay.
You know.
Yep.
All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. You
You've
just
gone
went
south.
south. Blooper. All right, it's you just went south of the
Okay.
blue line. All right, 1, 2, 3.